Men spend their whole lives trying to figure out women, yet most never even understand themselves. Strange, isn't it? They read books, watch videos, follow dating gurus, and still end up confused. Plato never wrote a single line about dating or relationships. But if you read his work with brutal honesty, you'll find something hidden, an uncomfortable truth running through everything he taught. Before men ever try to understand women, they must first confront the blindness inside their own minds. See, Plato wasn't handing out pickup lines or telling men how to win hearts. He went deeper into the disease that ruins men long before a woman even enters the picture. He showed us that the untrained mind is the perfect playground for deception, and that's the heart of the problem. Remember the allegory of the cave? Prisoners chained in the dark, staring at shadows on the wall. They think the shadows are reality. They worship them. They fight to protect the illusions. Most people read this as a political story, or maybe a warning about propaganda. But look closer. One of the most powerful shadows that traps men isn't just political lies. It's the illusion of woman. Not woman in her true nature, but woman as an idea. A projection in the male mind that keeps him distracted, compliant, enslaved without chains. That's what Plato was really hinting at. Think about it. Plato warned us, people will always fight to defend illusions. And no illusion is more intoxicating than the idea that women are pure, innocent, and incapable of manipulation. Men build entire castles in their minds around this fantasy. A woman smiles, and the untrained man calls it love. She cries, he calls it sincerity. She touches his hand, and he swears it's destiny. But Plato would have laughed. To him, this was the behavior of prisoners who refused to turn their heads toward the light. He taught that wisdom begins when you admit you know nothing. The beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms, he wrote. But how many men ever stop to define what a woman really is? Not what she shows, but what she is. Almost none. And because of that, women dominate the emotional world of men without lifting a finger. Here's the brutal truth. A woman doesn't even have to be malicious to destroy you. She just exists as a mirror, reflecting your own ignorance. She reflects the weakness you've refused to face. And Plato said it perfectly, the worst deception of all is self-deception. Men deceive themselves into thinking they're rational in love, when really, they're prisoners wrapped in invisible chains. Chains not on the wrists, but around the mind. This is Plato's real warning. Woman doesn't manipulate you. Your illusions about her do. It's the false goddess you build in your imagination that enslaves you. She smiles and you collapse. She pulls away and you chase. You surrender your power and you call it devotion. But Plato warned, those who cling to shadows will never see reality when the light finally burns their eyes. And so here you sit, telling yourself your heart is pure, your intentions noble, your love righteous. But if you could step outside yourself, if you could see yourself as the philosopher does, you'd notice something harsh. You've mistaken chains for wings. You've mistaken illusion for truth, and manipulation for love. Plato never sugarcoated the human condition. In Phaedrus, he described the soul as a chariot pulled by two horses, one noble, one wild. The noble horse seeks truth and discipline. The wild horse craves pleasure, beauty, temptation. And the man, the driver, is constantly struggling to control them. Here's where most men fail. Every time a woman enters the picture, the wild horse snaps its reins. It pulls you toward her laughter, her scent, her curves, her attention. And you, weak and untrained, let it drag you straight to your own ruin. You don't question it. You don't resist it. You just call the madness falling in love. But Plato saw it differently. To him, this wasn't romance. It was spiritual slavery. In the Symposium, he even called love a divine madness. A madness that blinds men, consumes them, makes them worship the image of beauty while forgetting what beauty actually is. It's divine, yes, but still madness. And unless you master it, you're nothing but a pawn. Here's the twist. Women know this. Maybe not always consciously, but instinctively. They understand. Men are ruled by this madness, and they don't need to be scheming villains to ruin you. They just need to exist as the prize in your mind. The moment you put her on a pedestal, when she becomes your purpose, your meaning, your reward, you no longer see her for who she is. You only see what you want her to be. And that's the perfect setup for manipulation. Plato feared something worse than war, the corruption of the soul. He warned that men who cannot rule themselves will be ruled by others, by tyrants, flatterers, manipulators. And who flatters more effectively than a woman who knows you crave her validation? She becomes the puppeteer. You become the puppet, dancing, begging, sacrificing your mission just for her attention. But here's the truth. She's not even really the one pulling the strings. The game started long before she arrived. The real war is inside you, the war between your higher self and your appetites. And every time you choose pleasure over principle, fantasy over truth, you don't just lose to her, you lose to yourself. Plato said the just man does not let the lustful part of his soul dominate him. But look at most men today, negotiating with their emotions like beggars, praying she'll choose them, validate them, complete them. That's not strength, that's slavery. That's a man who left the cave of shadows only to build a prettier cave with golden bars and velvet chains. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you questioned why you chase women at all? Have you ever asked whether she leads you closer to truth or deeper into illusion? Most men never ask, because asking requires courage. It means admitting you've been fooled. It means tearing down the stories you tell yourself about love, destiny, and devotion, and realizing they're nothing more than smoke and mirrors. Until you do that, you'll never see clearly. You'll never rise above. You'll stay a prisoner, not to women, but to the idea of women that you've refused to question. Plato understood that society runs on stories, myths designed to keep people obedient. And nowhere is that more obvious than in the myths men believe about women. You've been told they complete you. You've been told they're your better half. You've been told happiness begins and ends with her. But Plato knew better. In the Republic, he wrote that only those who have seen the truth are fit to rule. But here's the tragedy. Most men never even rule themselves. They live at the mercy of their appetites, their emotions, their cravings. And women, whether they realize it or not, learn how to use that weakness. Plato divided the soul into three parts: reason, spirit, and appetite. Reason seeks truth, spirit seeks honor, appetite seeks pleasure. And when it comes to women, most men live entirely in appetite. She smiles, you feel pleasure. She texts, you feel validated. She touches you, you feel alive. But this, Plato warned, is the lowest part of your being. If reason doesn't govern appetite, appetite will drag you into ruin. And that's exactly why women hold such power over weak men. She doesn't need to challenge your ideas. She doesn't need to care about your mission. All she has to do is feed your appetite, and you'll sell your soul for another taste. Like a man lost in the desert, crawling for drops of water. Water you once had the ability to create for yourself. Don't believe me? Look around. Men betray families for a stranger's touch. Men destroy their empires for women who don't even respect them. Men kill themselves because she walked away. What greater proof do you need? This isn't strength. This is slavery to appetite. And here's Plato's warning, hidden in plain sight. No man is free unless he rules himself. It doesn't matter how rich you are, how many women you attract, or how powerful you look. If she can break you with a glance, you're still chained. Plato also saw this pattern play out on a larger scale. In the Laws, he argued that the downfall of any city begins when men allow pleasure to rule over discipline. Look at the world today. Society is collapsing in slow motion because men are sacrificing strength at the altar of feminine approval. Politics, religion, culture. Everywhere you look, men are bending, apologizing, submitting. Not to truth, not to principle, but to the fear of losing her. Plato never told men to hate women. He taught men to see clearly. Woman is not the enemy. She is the reflection of your ungoverned soul. She plays the game because you invited her to the table blind, desperate, unprepared. But you can flip the board. You can rise from the cave. You can reclaim the throne of your own mind. But only if you face the truth about yourself, the truth most men run from. Here's what modern culture refuses to admit, but Plato hinted at long ago. Women test men for one reason only: to expose the weakness that already exists inside him. She is not the cause of your collapse. She is the mirror showing you who you really are when your ego is stripped bare. In Gorgias, Plato made a devastating point. It is better to suffer injustice than to commit it. Why? Because the man who commits injustice proves he has no mastery over his desires. And this applies directly to love. When you betray your own mission for her attention, when you bend your values to keep her close, when you silence your truth to avoid losing her, you're not loving her. You're committing injustice against yourself. You think you're being noble. You think you're proving your devotion. But in reality, you're proving that your soul has no ruler. And Plato taught that betrayal of the self is the seed of all injustice. Why do tyrants rise? Why do civilizations collapse? Because men refuse to govern themselves. Because men prefer pleasure over truth. Because men choose shadows over light. And women, whether consciously or not, push against those boundaries to reveal your weakness. She pulls back to see if you'll beg. She challenges your convictions to see if you'll fold. She tests your line to see if you'll hold it. And every time you break, she loses respect for you. Because deep down, she knows what Plato knew. A man who cannot rule himself, cannot rule anything. Not his life, not his future, not his legacy. Plato described the perfect ruler as the philosopher king. A man who masters himself first. A man who seeks truth above all. A man who cannot be shaken by the flattery of the crowd or the games of women. And here's where it gets powerful. If you can look into a woman's eyes and see not a goddess, not a villain, but a mirror. If you can take back your power, not with hate or bitterness, but with clarity, you step into what Plato called the just man. The man who governs himself. And the man who governs himself cannot be manipulated. He cannot be destroyed. He cannot be played. So here's the challenge. Stop chasing shadows. Stop worshiping illusions. Stop trading your soul for temporary affection. Stand up. Look in the mirror. Face the parts of yourself you've been too afraid to confront. Because once you do, you'll never again fear the games women play. You'll have outgrown the need to play at all. Most men live in terror of losing a woman's favor. But Plato would tell you to fear something far worse, losing your own soul. In Phaedo, he wrote, "The soul takes on the character of the actions it pursues." That means every time you make her attention your highest pursuit, your soul shrinks. Every time you bend your values for her, your soul weakens. Every time you betray your mission for her approval, your soul becomes small, petty, unworthy of greatness. It gets even harsher. Each time you silence your truth to keep her happy, each time you sacrifice your discipline for her emotions, you're not proving your love, you're betraying yourself. And Plato was clear. Betrayal of the self is the foundation of all injustice. Look at the pattern of history. Tyrants don't rise because they're strong. They rise because men are weak. Civilizations don't collapse because enemies are powerful. They collapse because men refuse to govern themselves. They would rather serve pleasure than serve truth. They would rather chase shadows than face the light. And here's the irony. Women instinctively know this. That's why they test. That's why they push. Not because they want to destroy you, but because your weakness destroys you first. She withholds affection, do you beg? She questions your convictions, do you fold? She pushes your limits, do you hold the line or do you crumble? And every time you break, every time you choose comfort over clarity, she sees the truth. A man who cannot rule himself cannot be trusted to rule anything else. Plato's solution wasn't complicated, but it was brutal. You must become a ruler of yourself, a philosopher king in your own life. You must climb out of the cave, face the blinding light of truth, and accept the fire, that burns away illusions. Because only then are you free. Freedom doesn't come from money. It doesn't come from status. It doesn't come from how many women you can attract. Freedom comes from mastery over your own soul. Do you see what this means? Women aren't the problem. They never were. The problem is the reflection staring back at you. She's the mirror, the test, the challenge. And unless you master yourself, you'll keep failing that test again and again. But if you rise, if you rule yourself with reason, if you align your actions with truth instead of appetite, you become unshakable, you become untouchable, you become free. So here's my question for you. Do you have the courage to face that reflection? Do you have the discipline to stop betraying yourself? Because if you do, you'll never look at women the same way again. You won't need her approval. You won't fear her rejection. You'll respect her for what she is, not a goddess, not a curse, but a mirror. And in that moment, you'll understand Plato's deepest warning. No man is free who has not mastered himself. But the man who does, he becomes what the world desperately needs: a ruler of his own mind, a builder of his own destiny, a man who cannot be played. If this message shook something in you, don't let it fade. Take action. Like this video. Share it with a man who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel and be part of what we're building here. A brotherhood of men who refuse to live in the shadows. Men who dare to face the truth. Men who rise above illusion. Support this movement by following the link in the description. Join us, because the world doesn't need more men chasing shadows. It needs men who rule themselves, men who walk in truth, men who are free.